live on YouTube and then hand it over to you.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and Travis, I might have to jump off at 7:30. Basically, it's Ramadan has started, so I'm doing fasting, so I have to break out exactly around that time.
So, fair enough.
All right, Travis, I think you are all set.
Okay, thanks, Liam. Welcome and good evening, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Scarborough Ad Hoc Downtown Development Committee. We are almost fully attended. I know that we had one member, Sarah, is not going to be able to join us tonight. The town manager, Tom Hall, is also not here, but we can get started, and I think we may have one or two stragglers, and hopefully they'll join us in the next few minutes. So let's begin with the minutes from last meeting. Does anybody have a motion on what we can do with those minutes? Art moves passage. Yes. We have a second. Second from Kim. Is there any discussion, questions, revisions to the minutes from our last meeting? Seeing none, we have a first and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? It's unanimous. Okay, developers report. Dan and Rocky, do you have anything new for us over the past 2 weeks?
I do, and hopefully you can hear me.
You're a little soft, but we can hear you.
Okay. Let me turn it up a little here. I had a lot of technical trouble last night at the planning board meeting and almost threw this computer out in the middle of Black Point Road, but I got through it. So thanks for having us here tonight, folks. Quickly, I did have an opportunity to tour the main health facility the end of last week, and I got a terrific tour. They were right about 11 o'clock in the morning. They're right in the midst of it. They were doing a little over 1,500 people that day, and they have been doing about 1,500. Their biggest day was 1,680. And they're confident that they could do 2,000 a day if they had the vaccine. So they're really happy with the facility and how it's flowing, and their average patient time within the facility is under 30 minutes, from walking in the door to fill out your paperwork to get your vaccine and wait your 15 minutes and leave. So pretty happy to report that, and really feel like we're making a step in the right direction. So I realize that's not really part of the downtown committee's purview, but I think it's good info to have out there. Wanted to let you know that Dan and I did finally finalize our decision. We have hired a downtown planning consultant. We think we've made a really good choice. We had a couple of really well qualified people that we were talking with, and I think we've made the right choice. I'm going to let Dan talk to you a little bit about that. However, we have hired them. They are going to be working for us. We have been unable to meet with them over the last couple of weeks, and we're definitely going to be off the pace of what we thought we would be the last when we met 2 weeks ago. Our plan is to try to get to them and actually have a meeting with them sometime next week, but we're not entirely sure that that's going to happen. And the reason for that, frankly, is we've been very, very bogged down with working on this growth management ordinance issue that is before the council right now. And I do want to bring it up to this committee so that you're fully aware of what's going on. But the council is working on the growth management ordinance at this point in time. We're hoping that the Downs will become exempt as part of that ordinance, which would allow us to continue on our plan for the rest of the year to get more infrastructure in the ground. Our next piece of work at the Downs, if you will, from the Route 1 end is a significant stretch of Scarborough Downs Road, as well as other pieces of the road network. And at this point in time, we're stalled. We cannot get permits to allow us to do that. So we're hoping that the council will move forward with fixing that and make the Downs exempt. It's not only bogging us down right now and causing a lot of time spent on it, But if it doesn't, if it doesn't get fixed, if the Downs doesn't become exempt, it will absolutely hinder our ability to even build a downtown. The current growth management ordinance just wouldn't allow us to build mixed use buildings with that are allowed under the ordinance, but we just couldn't get enough building permits under its current configuration. So we're certainly hoping that the council will work on that and will get us some relief quickly on that. But frankly, it's taken quite a lot of Dan and my time, as well as we're very close to our traffic movement permit, which has been a monumental effort, and we're on the cusp of having that issued right now. So it's put us back in meeting with our consultants, but we expect that probably by the end of next week we can really get them going. I guess at that point, I'd hand it over to Dan and have him talk to you about who we've hired and what our plans are there.
Thanks, Rocky. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
There's a bit on my computer, there's like a ticking noise. I don't know if anybody else has that or not. But
I think that's on Rocky. I'm just going to mute you, okay? All right, there we go.
Thanks, Rocky, and thanks, committee members. So as Rocky indicated, we've went under contract with a firm named actually Goody Clancy. They're planners, architects, urban designers. They're a New England-based firm. They're actually based in Boston. They do a lot of this kind of work. So they specialize in downtown designs, mixed-use projects, innovative type communities, modern communities. So we're really excited about them. They do work nationally, but they certainly have a New England focus, places that I think everyone would be familiar with. They've worked in Cambridge, Somerville. We talked about, at least the subcommittee or the modeling committee has talked about Assembly Row in Somerville. They actually worked on that project in its beginning stages. They've worked recently in Burlington, South Burlington, Vermont, Plymouth, Mass, which is actually a similar community to Scarborough, and did a project that's pretty similar in kind of a suburban location, similar to the Downs in Scarborough. And they're actually right now also working in Maine. So they're working in the Biddeford Mill District. Actually for Jim Brady, if that name rings a bell to folks, he's a developer in Portland, but also is doing work in other communities, including Biddeford. So he's working for Jim and his team, Fathom, on a pretty exciting project in Biddeford. I also think they're working on Saco Island. There's a project that's been kind of on and off for quite a while, and has some new life, and they're working on that one. And Lewiston kind of waterfront. So a great kind of portfolio, local experience, but also kind of out of region experience, which I think can help us. And so we're pleased to engage them. We think they're a good fit for our team, for the project, for our needs, and also the goals of this downtown committee, and kind of helping engage with you folks. So as Rocky indicated, we've taken a key first step. We've engaged them, and we've had some good conversations with them, and done our homework. We just haven't been able to take the next step, given some front burner issues that we're working on. But they're geared up, and they understand what we need and the general time frame. So we look forward to jumping in with them and at the right time, engaging them with you folks. Happy to answer questions or talk about it further if the committee has any.
Great. Thank you, Dan and Rocky, and congratulations. They sound like a great firm. And Rocky, we always love to hear about the updates at the vaccination site. It's it's getting nothing but rave reviews from what I've seen online, and is genuinely making a significant difference while the state's surging. So thank you for keeping us apprised of that. Dan, maybe could you just take a moment to talk about what exactly it is that your contract with with the design firm is designed to cover? What did you agree to work on with them? Is it purely designing the downtown? Is it the greater district itself? Is it what's your goal of what you hope to get out of them?
Sure, and it's been a few days, so I'm gonna kind of give you a general overview, not sort of line by line since I looked at their scope, but I mean, they're gonna be kind of first and foremost for us, they're gonna get up to speed on the project. You know, we've been at this for, I'm losing track of the years, but you know, between 3 and 5. And so there's a learning curve. That's the initial kind of step is orientation. They know what our goals are already, you know, part of our interview process in terms of the downtown area. So they're going to get up to speed. They're going to kind of look at our past plans with a critical eye and tell us what we were on the right track with and what they would do differently. And they're going to do some kind of initial, we've called it bubble diagrams, we've called it kind of concept planning, but they're going to do some initial concept planning for us, a few different scenarios to a point that kind of is at a level that the downtown committee can kind of review and engage with. And so not take it too far, but take it far enough that it kind of fits in with the project and has something for the committee to kind of react to. And we specifically, so that'll be the first, you know, few weeks of working with us to kind of get to the right point to then work with this committee. And we specifically asked them for an additional kind of charrette/workshop scope. We talked about that at the last committee meeting and at the modeling committee level. So we have kind of a specific scope and fee from them for that piece. And it's sufficiently loose that we can massage it and make it the right kind of workshop or charrette. But that's a piece that they're offering and kind of build into their work plan. Should that be the right move for the group to do, which I know we've been talking about and likely we'll talk a bit further about. So, Travis, they're not going to look at like the whole master plan. They're not going to say, hey, maybe the innovation district should be over here or anything like that, but they're going to look at it from okay, how does the downtown, how does the center kind of knit the project together? So they're certainly going to be looking at the whole project, but their scope of influence is, going to be more on the core in this downtown area and how it engages with the rest of the project.
Fantastic.
And Rocky's on mute, but add to that, certainly, Rocky.
Am I good? Can you hear me? Okay. So I just wanted to add that, a big piece of this first part is spending some time with Dan and fully understanding what have we done, where do we think the downtown is, how is it, how do we have it arranged and get their heads around, what's fixed, what's not fixed, and how to move that ball forward. But we know that's going to take significant amount of Dan's time. And so we're hoping that we're going to get freed up, in the next week that we can get started on that.
Excellent. Brian?
Dan or Rocky, do you expect they'll be able to give any advice regarding connection outside of the Downs? I know that's one of the areas of interest of one of the subcommittees. Or are they really going to be focused inward with their design advice?
No, I think connection, particularly to the external road system. I mean, Higas Parkway comes forefront to my mind, just given the sides of the project. So no, they're going to be challenging us on those things and thinking about those things for sure as we kind of proceed and downtown orientation to the edges, those types of things. I think as we've covered in the past, and we have a fair amount of natural resource constraints, so it's not a entirely blank canvas by any means, but where possible, we're going to be identifying opportunities for fresh ideas on that, Brian, and how to best engage to the surroundings.
Great.
Any other questions for Dan and Rocky? Also, just a quick update. I did hear from Kim Bridgham that she won't be able to join us tonight. So we're fully attended. Bruce. Bruce, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
All right. Dan, there is a document we've just revisited, and I think we'll probably talk about it later this evening. It was adopted in November 28, 2018, the downtown for Scarborough, connecting Scarborough Downs and Oak Hill. That document, it's sort of resurfaced for our committee. Is that going to be turned over to your design team? The reason I'm asking, because there's a lot of information in there about some work that was done back in 2018, a 4-day charrette with the public, a vision for the downtown area. It's got a ton of information in it and would be a excellent document for your design team to review. Are you aware of that?
So
I guess my question was if you were turning it over, and it sounds like you're not.
no, there's two different resources that I'm thinking of, and sounds like you've looked at it more recently. There's the downtown plan that went with the credit enhancement agreement process, and there's also the comprehensive plan. We would share both of those documents, Bruce, but I'm glad you brought it up because it sounds like it's fresher in your fresher on your desk than is mine. So we're going to provide them all the resources we can to get them up to speed.
Okay. Yeah, I just don't want this to get lost because it looks like it's got a ton of information in it.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for the reminder.
Anything else? Anybody else with questions or comments for Dan and Rocky? John?
So if you guys do plan to provide the comprehensive plan, I know that there were updates to it specific to the Downs that I don't know if those are ready yet for prime time. So I would probably wait to share that with them until the final version or the next draft is available.
Yeah, I defer to you folks on that, John, and the planning department. I'm not fully up to speed on any recent
Yeah,
updates.
I think there just might be more content that I know that they were working on that might be more relevant for them to have. So I guess you could provide them the draft if you wanted to, and then when this next version is available, which will probably be in a couple weeks. So just depending on when you were planning to provide it to them, there might be more content that might be even more relevant.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, John. Okay, seeing no more hands. Thank you, guys. Sounds like a lot of exciting movement on getting a good team together to help give us some guidance. So glad to hear it. Subcommittee reports. I'll quickly start on the communication side. Did everybody receive? I got 2 emails this week from the public. Did anybody or everybody receive those? Okay, so it sounds like we still don't have that solved. I will forward them to the group. What I do want to mention is that both emails appeared to be constituents who are disappointed or who have some complaints about the residential layout of the Greater Downs project, which we're certainly a venue where we can receive that kind of comment, but this committee is focused on the downtown development specifically. So I'm not sure that there's any action to be taken aside from forwarding those to Dan and Rocky, which I'm happy to do. And I'll share with the greater group. And Liam, and also for Tom, it sounds like we still don't have that issue solved where messages from the public appear to only maybe be going to Tom Hall and I. I'm not sure who's getting them. So something for staff to continue to try to troubleshoot.
I'll get that addressed, Travis. I didn't realize that was still an issue. I think that we repaired it with our other ad hoc committee. So I'll get that solved tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. And I'll forward the message to everybody, but I think ultimately, considering it's off topic for our committee's work, the responsibility is to share it with the developers, and that'll be the end of it. But thank you again to anybody from the public who's watching this, who wants to share your opinions on developing the downtown district. We do, as we move toward collaboration with the contractors the developers have hired. We talked at our last meeting, and I know that it's on our agenda for later, but about planning a more thorough outreach from this committee as we start to have some concrete materials to present to people of Scarborough. So more to come. I believe that we probably won't have a report from the grandstand committee. So how about the Scarborough Downs District and the Community Integration Committee? Is there a report from that group this week?
Yeah, so we met briefly a week ago tomorrow, so last Wednesday, to address some ideas that had been floating around. We are, and a couple of questions for the contractors. A little curious, we heard you're a little bit in the weeds on the sort of the transportation side of things, traffic planning. I think you mentioned it earlier. We were wondering if there would be a way to get some type of summary as to, as things become more concrete, just a better understanding of sort of the wheels that are in motion. It's a little difficult for us to sort of visualize the connectivity as those things are sort of still in limbo. I don't know if they've been resolved. I haven't had a chance to connect with you, Dan, to understand sort of where those things are in process. But just to kind of put the ball in your court a little bit, to maybe get us filled in when the time comes, when there's a little bit more clarity on what sort of traffic. We're particularly looking at like sort of the Route 1 area, which seems to be the major connectivity point to the rest of the downtown area. And also, the most problematic is seeing there's no sidewalks and things along those lines. And I know you guys are actively working on that, so not really trying to press it, but definitely want to get a little bit of insight when the time comes for that. And then we have had a couple discussions now regarding the pedestrian walkway that's sort of been proposed to connect towards the schools. And there's been an idea kind of floated about maybe some more permanent connectivity to 114. We've been sort of just kind of floating around the idea of, how, especially with the library sort of still in the picture slightly, potentially, how that connectivity is going to potentially improve traffic flow. If there's no real sort of road connection to the north. So we've kind of been having some conversations on that end. Nothing's been made definitive, but it's something that I think we'll want to get into a little bit more as time goes on. Just knowing there's so much on the, the plate of the contractors right now, we're more so just waiting a little bit longer to get a little bit clarity on those things before we can really start making some when we're season getting deep into those conversations. So Dan, maybe it'll be best to have sort of a conversation back and forth offline about how that is shaping up when the time comes. I know you've been in the weeds, so we've been kind of easing off.
Yeah, I mean, we're very close to finalizing what the traffic engineers would call a mitigation plan. So improvements that would occur over the next 5 years associated with the project. And we're really pleased to report that Maine DOT is going to provide a very large kind of match to the private development improvements that we're making. And the town's going to participate as well with impact fees that have been collected from past development. So it's a really robust improvement plan that goes well beyond kind of the impacts of the project. That's fixing things that the state and town have needed to fix for quite a while, leveraging the project. So it's pretty exciting that we're at that point. And I can, within a few weeks, I can kind of safely provide a summary of what those things are. Some of them are what you're speaking of, Tom. Sidewalk improvements along Route 1, future sidewalks on Highgate Parkway. That would be a partnership with the town to connect the project ultimately up to the Cabela's Plaza, through the Beacon, potentially. And many others, some transit improvements, et cetera, some signal improvements. So I don't want to bore the committee with it right now, but I can provide a summary, and then that could be, maybe something subcommittee talks about or the larger committee has access to, whatever's deemed appropriate to kind of inform the downtown work. And then other areas that really are outside of what we can really deliver, that are town initiatives that I think you're speaking of. Is there a connection over to the campus, school campus, has a potential down the road?
It's really becoming clear in the subcommittee that those are going to be the two main focuses of our attention, is how the municipal campus is connected and what Route 1 looks like, because those seem to be maybe not the most trafficked, but probably the most, the areas that might cause the most hang up because of what they are already. I think the other spots already have the capability of handling high traffic, whereas obviously Route 1 connects to the rest of downtown. So there needs to be some sort of attention paid there. I think that's really what we'll be looking at, is there's a lot of concern about people trying to cross Route 1 there because there's no sidewalk, on the Scarborough Downs side specifically. That was the focus of our conversation. So more to come on that.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. So the last committee is the modeling committee. And I think where we left this 2 weeks ago is we're inching more and more towards maybe some kind of broader recommendation to the group. Brian, Bruce, whoever wants to take it away from the modeling committee.
You guys want me to start on that one too? I can just keep going. All right. I apologize for missing last week. So I wasn't fully, in the loop on how the conversations evolved in the last main committee meeting. But how we started breaking things down on the side, I think Bruce already alluded to it. We started diving back into the downtown revitalization plan that was posted in 2018, which already has a lot of very useful information. And a lot of the information that we were sort of seeking on our own was laid out pretty well, and was something that was produced by the town already. So rather than sort of spinning in circles in a few ways on our own, we brought that up. We worked through that plan, and I would highly recommend everybody who's on the call refamiliarize yourself with that, because it really did sort of point us back in the right direction in a lot of good ways. In that, they referenced the Planapalooza, which was an event that looks like it happened quite a while back. We are sort of seeking a little bit more information on how that went. Brian, did you mention that you went to it? Somebody, yeah.
Yeah, Colby and I went to it for one of the days.
Yeah, so it seems like there was a lot of good information that came of that, and we're hoping to get a little bit of a summary. So I've actually reached out to Tom Hall already, and I was hoping to follow up with him tonight, but I'll make sure that we follow up afterwards, seeing as he's not in attendance, to make sure that we are able to sort of grab some of the information that the public maybe has already provided. And then with that, we're sort of developing this list of, a small list of wants that we can sort of throw into what we're calling sort of the filter. And each one of us individually are also starting to look at some actual models that have been discussed. I myself reached out to Blueback Square down in West Hartford during the break in the last couple of weeks. I got a really good lead on the individual who was in charge of essentially the early stages of that development. And I'm in the process of planning a phone call with her for this next week to start to get a little bit of information on, having seen it from end to end, what worked, what didn't. Now that there are, a number of years into it actually being up and running, what sort of were effective parts of the process, where are the highlights, what should we sort of be focusing on that could really be roadblocks and things on those lines, just to get a perspective of the process from end to end. Take some good notes and report back on how those go. So we're all been sort of tasked with trying to make contact on some of these, the models essentially, so that we have something firm to report. And that's very close to being at the front of things now.
Great. Anybody else from modeling?
Bruce or Brian, you got anything else? I think that's about all that I had in my notes.
Nothing else for me.
Okay.
I thought that was-
Oh, sorry.
I thought that was good, Tom. Thanks. I had my voice off.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Tom. Thanks, everybody. I do actually want to call your attention to one other message from the public that I failed to mention earlier. That was a communication directly to Councillor Anderson, who forwarded it to me. I don't think it went to the full group, but it was a question that may be a little bit more relevant to us, which was a member of the public was asking about an update on the Edge Sports project. And I think that her purpose for asking was, I guess, first of all, whether it appears to still be moving forward, and if it is or if it is not, whether some kind of public outdoor sports facilities might be something for us to consider, which is, I guess, downtown adjacent, but maybe not downtown direct. I wonder, maybe Dan and Rocky, if you could just give us the latest that you're allowed to and able to on those projects, Edge in particular. I'd love to hear if there's anything new on WEX as well that were announced sort of right before the pandemic.
Sure. So I can answer that in kind of two ways. One is the community center committee. I think that's what it was called. Never really finished its work due to the pandemic and potentially other priorities for the town, or maybe I shouldn't say that. They provided a report, so they maybe finished their work. But I don't think there was no action kind of taken by the council on it. So it's been a year, so I'm not exactly sure of kind of that final kind of product, but they did a lot of hard work, had a lot of, similar to this committee, had a lot of time spent in looking at needs and what the town would like to see within a partner, within a facility, working with Edge, and that just never kind of came to a conclusion. So that's kind of where that stands. So I guess we kind of turn it back to the town in terms of that part of the question. The second piece is Edge is still interested in certainly the Downs and having a facility here. And there's still high demand for certainly the private side of these type of sports complex, the surfaces, the ice, the fields, the indoor, outdoor kind of sports complex operation. So again, they're still very interested in the Downs and the site in Scarborough and having a facility. And we hope to accommodate them. We just, we have to work through some other things, right now with this committee and other priorities. But so that's kind of where it stands. And we'd ask the town to kind of give us an update as well.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Brian?
Travis, when I think that was one of the emails that did get circulated, or I got a chance to read it. And when when I read it, it struck me that I could call it the market that the Edge might serve could be a little bit different than the market that a public field might serve. And I wonder at some point, and I don't know if the point is today or some point in the future, it would be worth talking about whether one of the amenities that the group wants to recommend or think about is a public field, for youth or even adult sports leagues to be able to use, which I think is a little different than kind of an indoor controlled type space. And I think if we were to get into a conversation about that, I would suggest that there's probably some sort of inventorying of what we've already got, that would be appropriate to do before we get too far down the line. But it, you know, it did strike me that those could be, you know, although they're all on flat surfaces and people play sports on them, they could be two different products, if you will.
And I think it's certainly something, you know, as soon as the consultants get on board and we can really start to study what our opportunity is for green space in the downtown area. And whether, you know, it may be at the end of this that we make our recommendations on the downtown, and then there are a list of great ideas that came up that just won't fit in it. And we'll sort of pass those along as advisory items that we're not recommending as part of the downtown. But I do think that, you know, as soon as we're able to start looking at this more granularly with our consultants, we'll be able to get a sense of what we can do with the green space that's available to us. So it's certainly worth, you know, revisiting when we're able to get into a little more detail. Kim?
I think just to Dan's point and to Brian's point, I mean, the letter was talking about traffic issues and such items with the public feels. And to Dan's point, I did go to the readout of that other committee, and you know, part of the whole thing with the EDGE is that, does the town participate or not? And part of the participation could not necessarily exclusively, but could include field or ice usage, if I wasn't mistaken when I heard the readout. But again, it comes back to the town on whether they want that participation, I think.
I mean, the concept was a year ago, the opportunity for the town to solve some of the existing or future space needs for kind of public recreation space, whether it be a pool, indoor, outdoor surfaces that could be complemented by private use to make it viable, you know, a public-private facility. And so that's where, you know, that report was, I think, completed or close to it, and no decisions were made. And of course, we've been in a global pandemic. So, and to your point, Kim, too, there's a scenario where it's an entirely private facility, but there is town school use potentially, where they're one of other entities that have ice time, that have surface time, and it comes at a cost that's already being borne. They're just going to different facilities elsewhere in the region. So that's also a scenario. So I think options are still on the table. It's how it's, you know, choices to be made and partnerships to be established to kind of get there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dan. Thanks everybody for the questions on that one. So that the regulatory committee did not meet, although I do think that we have committed ourselves to dive in on the sign issue. So maybe Dan or Rocky, whichever one of you wants to say not it first, can have a conversation with us at a different night about the sign and whether there is a way that we can be helpful there. We can solve that outside of tonight's meeting though. So that wraps up our subcommittee reports, and we have 3 other items on our calendar for tonight, our agenda. And the first one I had kind of tossed out there, which is whether there are some goals that we want to set for ourselves between now and the point when we start to dive in directly with the downtown contractors that the developers have hired. Where do we want to be by that point, a month from now, or later in May, or whenever the time is right for us to start looking at some concrete items? Is there stuff we want to accomplish? Are there things that we need to do? So I kind of put that out as a question to the group. And I wonder if anybody has thought about that over the past couple of weeks and has a sense of how to make the best use of our time. over the next couple of meetings. Bruce.
I try to keep my mouth shut. Nobody's talking. I
Thank
think
you,
one of the
Bruce.
things we got to
Thank you.
do
Wait
here.
a minute, Travis, I have an idea. Hold on.
Too
I
late.
think it's important. Tom mentioned it earlier. I think that there was an important document that was created that represented a lot of thought, a lot of time, a lot of planning. It was a document that was well written, tons of information, and it somehow has gotten lost in the process. Now, I'm not sure how with the continuity of this project. I mean, obviously this project was being thought of back prior to 2018, but this document covers an enormous amount of ground and it's gotten forgotten. And I'm kind of wondering how that happened, because it concerns me that we're duplicating efforts that were already covered in this document. And shame on me. I was, Tom Hall, I think, passed these documents out at one point in the beginning. And I just sort of breezed through it to just familiarize myself with it, but not to get into the nitty gritty of it. But I'm not sure what possessed me to go back and read this recently. And it has covered so much information. It was just startling that it seemed like we could probably be light years ahead of ourselves where we are today if we had taken this document more seriously early. And it just concerns me that we missed it. And I think it's important that we all look at it again, because quite frankly, it's the first time I've seen sort of a vision for this entire process that I've always been sort of hungry for. And this document lays it out. And that's why I thought it was important for me to mention. I hated to see Rocky and Dan forget about it and not pass it on. Quite frankly, I think when they passed the contract back over to their urban planners, this should have been the next document that went, because it does have so much good information in it. I'm not sure if tonight's the right forum to talk a little bit more about this. As you know, I can. I'd like to talk with our subcommittee, because where we had talked about, or I had proposed the 10 principle, for our report. Quite frankly, I think the format of this report was well put together and covered a lot of information. And I think that one of the things we're asking is who put this thing together, because it was put together by somebody that does this on a regular basis. And maybe we should just leave it at that. I think our subcommittee needs to huddle on it one more time before we sort of present it some more thinking to the rest of the committee. But I do think that the rest of the committee needs to refamiliarize themselves with this document. It's just a wealth of information. So I just leave it at that. I know there were other members of our committee that were looking at it too, that were sort of surprised as to how much stuff was in there. I don't know, Brian, did you have a chance to look at it more?
I think, Dan, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I wanted to calm Bruce's fears a little bit. So that report was put together 2 years ago when the Downs team was negotiating the credit enhancement agreement with the town. It was a requirement of that process, and I basically wrote it in collaboration with the planning director and the economic development director for the town. So it's not lost, and it's a good reminder, but it's all, the direction of this project is following that. In our conversations, we'll certainly follow that with our consultant, and our master plan is basically premised on what you're describing. So I think we're in good shape, and I appreciate your reminder of that document, but it's instilled in the project and will be instilled in our conversations with the consultant.
I think as a deliverable, this is a good document for what we've been charged to do. Our entire larger committee has been done. And again, this was put together by somebody. Dan, do you know who actually authored this document? Who actually penned it and pulled it together and in essence published it? I mean, it's well done.
Yeah,
It looks,
I worked on it with Sedco, Economic Development Director. It was us. It wasn't an outside consultant. And then it was adopted. It had to be adopted by the council. But we put it together.
you know, obviously it's evolutionary, but what it did do on the very last pages, it sort of foretold what the next steps were going to be for it, and actually it envisioned the committee that we currently are. And on the last 2 pages, I think I forget what it was called, future processes. It discussed this information should be taken, and then as the plans are developed, like they're in the process of getting underway, that this committee will go ahead, review those, and in essence, take the information that was developed in this document and overlay it, and then start to discuss what hasn't been addressed. And then, of course, you know, throw in some new ideas as well. But, and, you know, it seemed like we were starting, you know, a couple months ago, we were almost like, geez, we got a blank canvas here. Well, we really don't. I mean, we have this document, which really paints a pretty good picture. I think so. What it looked like, the last 2 pages of this document tells us what to do next. So I was having a difficult time reconciling this document with the charge that we were given by Town Hall, because it looks like the Town Council has perhaps also forgotten this document. And so I'm trying to reconcile this, need a little bit of help with it, because one document says we've got a lot of information, and other groups as well, maybe we don't have so much. And I'm not sure what to say about that. I'm just telling you, I'm personally having a problem reconciling these 2 documents.
Brian, it looks like you've been trying to jump in.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think two of the ideas that I had were to take this document and, which is, not super dense, but kind of pull out the ideas that lie within it, as kind of the starting point of, the platter of the ideas of the public. See what else we can come up with that seems to make sense. And then, run it through our, good idea machine, whatever that ends up looking like, to see, what sticks and what doesn't. And then, Bruce, the more I think about those 10 principles, the more I'm starting to realize that, those are really, they also work as principles for what to think about to help an idea succeed. So when, if we think about an idea to include like a water fountain, it's important to think about who's going to champion the water fountain, who's going to maintain the water fountain, who's going to clean the water fountain, whatever. But really kind of have that, regimented way of thinking that the 10 principles gives us. But I think starting out with this body of work that's already been done, and extracting, the digestible bullet points will be a nice way for us to gain some momentum with new work product. And, time has passed, right? So maybe there's some new thoughts that we have, and then we can cull from that nice big bucket of good ideas, and then, use the process that we developed to, help with the successful implementation of them. So that was the thought that I had.
Well, I've always been beating my gums about the idea that we needed a framework to put all this information in. And the principles, the 10 principle thing was, my thinking about it at the time. However, I think this document provides a good framework. I think it basically needs to be rewritten for phase 2 of this report. I mean, this is like part 1 of this story. We're ready to write part 2. But part 2 should be written in the same format. And it was, I'm not sure, and it's one when we met last time for our little subcommittee meeting, as I was trying to get you to start thinking as you were, I know you had to go, but to start thinking about how we're going to actually write this thing and how and what kind of format we're going to put it in. And I think that this is a good format. I think we can tinker with it a little bit, but it was written by somebody that knew what they were doing. And I just said, I couldn't put this document together. I mean, I could help feed it, but I couldn't put it together. And I'm not sure if we have anybody here, or do we need somebody as an outside consultant to sort of guide us through here that understands how this document is put together and can do it, and we feed that author, for lack of a better word, to make this happen. And with all the things, the evolution of thinking, making sure that we're getting everything in there that we want. But we need, I think, at the end of the day, this was a good document.
So Bruce, do you have some thoughts about how we can put that document to use as a committee over the course of the next month? Do you want us to make it a discussion item at our next meeting, and have everybody read it? And what are your thoughts about how to engage that document with our work?
Well, that's why I wanted to talk to our subcommittee again. I had some thoughts since then on how we can, and it's not too far from what Brian had talked about, extracting points from this, and then also how we can still sort of perhaps engage part of the elements of the 10 principles. My current thinking, and I'm just very briefly, is that we still assign one principle for each one of our committee members, just to not to formally address every item, but to somebody to basically champion one of the principles. They can still be at large for all the other principles, but be a champion to understand one principle, so that when we review any sort of documents, whatever one of those, that one individual could focus a little bit more on that particular principle when reviewing whatever documents that we get. And again, I just wanted the brief, I didn't want to get into that too far with the entire committee, but that's just sort of the thinking that I'm having right now that I'd like to talk with our subcommittee about next time, about how we can organize our thinking into this earlier document, which I think is just really super.
So it sounds like that might be one for the modeling committee. And we'll talk about where you steered with it at our next group meeting. Any other thoughts? I mean, and maybe, if you guys have some homework assignments for us, Rocky and Dan, fire away. What do you want us to be ready to talk about when you're ready to introduce us to your contractors? What are you hoping that we're able to walk into that room with? Rocky, you're not muted, but we don't hear you.
Sorry, guys. I was refreshing my, I was reorienting to the downtown plan just now. So it is a good document. In terms of, like we've talked with the modeling committee for a while, using this time while you guys kind of quote unquote wait for a concept plan to react to. I still think that kind of doing the world tour and coming with ideas to impart from other examples that you've researched, the 10 principles, and maybe they're not 10. Is it 10, Bruce, or more? But really kind of coming educated with ideas, both based on your knowledge of Scarborough, your research on these plans, but also other examples and other kind of best practices is what I would recommend. So we have a really productive workshop or charrette that's the committee comes fully kind of educated and prepared for it. I don't have any other kind of great hints as to what else to do kind of sort of in the meantime.
Dan, could I ask you, when you talk with your design team, after they had a chance to digest the information that's currently available, is it a fair question to ask them, knowing that we exist, how would they see themselves interacting with us? What would they like to see from us in terms of information? And this is their stock and trade. I mean, they do this day in, day out. They've probably been through this process more than a dozen times with probably the project manager. So I'm just asking if you could ask those guys what they want out of our committee.
Sure.
Brian?
You know, kind of along the same lines, Dan, you mentioned some of the other communities that Goody Clancy is working in. You know, we have talked about our world tour and like thinking about neat places to look around. If it's not a huge lift for them, you know, if they could recommend some places that might have more relevance for us to focus on, that I think that could be helpful.
Mhm.
And then we could, you know, prioritize those as tour spots.
I'm happy to. Yeah, and they've shared a few in their preparation to talk to us in their interview process. So they've already shared a few, and I'll definitely ping them to share some more that are good parallels to the Downs, to Scarborough, to our market versus, you know, Assembly Square, for example,
Yeah.
which is a more urban setting.
And it might help, you know, to the extent that we either are reading reports that they develop or are engaging in dialogue with them, to the extent that they, you know, if we are, and they're using examples from other places, if we've already done some research on those other places and have some familiarity, I think it could help make the conversations richer and more relevant for us. So if we can get some of that early prep work done now, that could really lay a good foundation for the future.
Yeah, great idea.
Yeah, I think that's great from both you, Brian and Bruce. You know, let's ask the experts what they want us to come armed with. So we look forward to hearing what they suggest. Does anybody else, Brian?
Joe, I've got one thing that may be tangential, but it's a little helping with some vision. And so if this is tangential, we can move it to later. But I've been driving down Route 1 lately and noticing some construction adjacent to the Downs, and it just strikes me that things are changing, and I wonder if those changes are going to affect our I don't know, our view of what it's like to drive to the Downs, or our view of what the connection really is like. And you know, is there, and if it will, whether there's some work to be done to kind of physically model or with some images, like what's approved to be developed in this immediate area, so that we're not all just thinking about what's there today, but we're thinking about, you know, what's a approved build out that's kind of the future context for this land, so that we're not making a comparison, you know, between, you know, the cornfield and the future, but it's really the future development and the future.
Yeah, we actually have that could help with that. A context plan that showed, and it could be, maybe it's 8 or 12 months old, but a context plan that not only shows the Downs, but also sites that we're aware of that are in design and permitting. If that's where you're going, Brian, to kind of fill in the context around the project. For example, there's a car dealership that's going to go in ultimately on the fourth corner of the exit 42.
Yeah.
There's
Well, it's like at that Enterprise Business Park, there's something getting planted right there, right?
Yeah.
And Kevin Bunker's got that, you know, that housing that's going in right at the entrance. And you know, even if it's just on a massing basis, you know, so you don't get a lot of detail, just to kind of see what the mass of the buildings might look like, I think it could change our impression of how this relates to the rest of town.
Kim?
And to Brian's point, even Rocky and Dan, what's coming up next in the Downs? As you start to build in towards so phase 2 is underway. So those condos and those single families are under, what's next? Like, you know, going towards the grandstand. I'm assuming there's something else. So that would play into it as well. And there is a lot of construction going on, like on Enterprise and just around the area, just to understand some of the gaps.
Absolutely. We can provide the information to the extent that we have it. We're gonna need help from the town on some of the other projects. I know Bluebird self-storage is the new project at the corner of Enterprise and Route 1, that large clearing. So that's like a climate controlled storage facility, multi-story. I think at least it'll appear that way from the street. But with help from planning department, I'm sure we can paint the full picture, the committee.
Yeah, and Dan, I would say, you know, I think it'd be helpful for you guys to do it. It may be something that's appropriate for the town to be doing and providing. I frankly, I don't care who does it. That it's great just to get it, but if that's kind of municipal off-campus stuff, and if it's easy enough for them to do it, that's I'd say coordinate that with them. And I don't know if Liam's able to talk about that, but
they would have more visibility. They would have complete visibility, more than we would.
Yeah.
So I think that I think that maybe at our next meeting, it sounds like you guys are going to get a chance to talk to them in the next week or so. If you can, if you're able by our next meeting to have some homework from them for this committee, I think that could be a really useful discussion for us 2 weeks from now. And that might be, that might be how we answer that question of what should we be doing over the course of the next month. Charettes, do we think that that's probably part of that same conversation? I have on our agenda as a separate item, charrettes, which we did open discussion on briefly 2 weeks ago. But I suspect that that's part of what we're going to ask our contractors for, is what do we want to get out of that, and what should we, how should we be preparing ourselves? Is there another reason that that's on the agenda that I'm not remembering? Do we have charrettes covered for this week? No hands. And then I think, oh, sorry, somebody spoke.
Do I recollect the charrettes being that when we were looking for ideas, it was a wonderful idea, but apparently Planapalooza already occurred and has been documented. So I think that we covered that. But it was envisioned that we have a second one in this report that I'm now referencing, to involve the community and to talk about the plans that the developers are going to be putting forth. So that, there's still a charrette, but it would be not as much of information. It's just like, this is what we got. Do you have any more ideas? Because it sounds like we've already had a big one. A 4-day charrette's a big deal.
Yeah, and I think if I remember right at our last meeting, we talked about a unique one for our committee to work on with the contractors. And this does sort of dovetail nicely into the last bullet on our agenda, which is talking about the means with which we communicate with the greater public about what we hope to work on with the contractors over the course of the next couple of months. Is that something that we ask them in advance of a charrette? Is it something that we do our charrette and then reach out to the public and say, here's what we worked on, and we'd love to hear your thoughts about it? So what we had added to the agenda for tonight was to just talk a little bit more about strategizing that public outreach. I suspect that all of these items may be a little more relevant 2 weeks from now, after we've had some communication with the consultants. But I'm certainly opening the floor to anybody who wants to talk about communications and charrettes tonight. I think it's going to be something that we spend a lot more time on in the next couple of weeks. Brian?
Travis, I think one thing I remember about Planapalooza was that it was a little more, while it was focused on a downtown, it was broader than the Downs.
Yeah.
And this group is focused on the Downs downtown. And so I wouldn't think of Planapalooza as a substitute for what we've been talking about as a charrette. And I'd like to really keep on the table the idea of some sort of planning and brainstorming event for this group of citizens to, create its own set of ideas to supplement what's already been out there. I think that'd be a really great resource to continue the work that's already started.
Yeah, I think it's the ideal exercise for us. So I'm sure Dan and Meraki, as you talk to them in the next week or so, so long as they know that that's something that we'd like to do with them, we would love to know what they hope to hear from us and how we can prepare to make it a useful exercise. So that's our agenda for tonight. We're now at sort of open committee discussion. Is there anything that anybody wants to bring up outside of the agenda while we have each other tonight? Going once, going twice. Okay, so let's talk about next agenda. And the reason I'm moving us, so long as I don't see hands, is I actually do see a couple of members of the public appear to be in the queue who want to address us tonight. So I want to make sure that we give them the chance to do that. But let's talk about our agenda for 2 weeks from now. And I think the first, what may end up being a lot of that meeting is sort of what we gain for instruction or intel from Dan and Rocky about what the contractors hope to hear from us and what they would like us to, maybe do for homework between now and the time that we start to talk to them. So I think that's certainly an item. What else do we want to focus on in a couple of weeks? That might sort of cover all three of those bullet points that we had on tonight's agenda. But if there's anything else in particular, now's the time for us to get it on our calendar. Okay. Well, I think that what we'll do then is we'll open conversation. Oh, sorry, John.
You might want to, based on the information we get from Rocky and Dan next week, think about timeline and probably submitting some sort of letter to the council asking for an extension, just to kind of, again, communicate where we think we are and just relative timing of when something might be available for the council.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. And that's something that we were looking forward to from you and John, which is tell us when you want us to ask you for more time. And I think that's, hopefully we'll get a vision of what our early summer is going to look like anyway. And then we'll know what to ask for. So that's a good point, John. We'll make sure to cover that. Public comment. So I see 2 phone call in listeners. They may just be here to listen. They may be here to offer comment. What I'm going to do, listeners, I'm going to read a phone number. And if that is yours, then I'm going to give you the opportunity to speak. So the first number is 206-0593. And you're welcome to address the committee now. It says to ask you to unmute. I'm not sure if I'm able to do that or not. And Rocky, are you the second phone number? Okay, so we have a mystery phone number. They appear to be on mute. I think if we can't sort out that tech, then maybe we'll ask you to submit written comment to us online, and we'll either read it at our next meeting or we'll invite you back. So we are, believe it or not, 20 minutes before our normal adjournment time. We'll give everybody one last shot to bring up any subjects that we want to cover tonight. And seeing none, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Art. Do I have a second? Seconded by almost everybody. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for giving up your Tuesday. We'll see you in 2 weeks.